We will be starting the programming in 3 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lena DeLeet. I am the programming director here at the Wisconsin Tech Association. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's February programming session. Today, we are excited to bring you a panel of regional tech leaders from the sports, entertainment, and venue spaces discussing technology trends at their respective organizations. Derek Hyde is the Vice President of Information Technology with the Milwaukee Brewers and has been with the organization for over 3 years, but has over 20 years of experience managing technology strategies. Steve Totzke is the Vice President of Information Technology at the Wisconsin Center District. The district includes 3 large venues, the UWM Panther Arena, the Miller High Life Theater, and the Wisconsin Center. All servicing sports, concerts, conventions, and more. Matt Rolfe, the Senior Network Engineer with the Milwaukee Bucks and Fiserv Forum, is also here with us today. He works to bring the forum online for concerts, sporting events, and other events. This panel will be held and moderated by a very familiar face to most in this room, Eric Printz, who is the WTA past president. I'll let the group provide you additional background, but thank you again for your attention and for attending today's session. Let's welcome our panelists with a round of applause.
All right. You gave me a mic? Past president, and they want to give me a mic. I don't talk enough. How is everybody? Welcome. This is going to be a fun one. Hey, Brian. Good to see you. Fantastic. So welcome this afternoon. Looking forward to this one. For those of you that don't know me, Eric Printz, past president. And one of the things that I do on the side other than this is I actually work for the Milwaukee Admirals. So I work in the buildings that Steve is in charge of. We had a game last night. It didn't do so well. But I have some insights of my own in regards to the technologies that I use, and it's been 15 or 16 seasons that I've been there, and it's been a lot of fun. It's just amazing to be on that side and see what it actually takes to run a facility, to run a game, to run a concert, to do that kind of thing. So anyway, that's me. I should have, where are my manners? Why don't we start? Derek, why don't we start with you? Why don't you give us a little bit of your background?
Well, thanks for having me here today, and welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. Derek Hyde, as they said, Vice President of Information Technology at the Brewers. I'm going into my 4th season. Knock on wood, it's going to happen soon. We, besides just the venue side of it, which a lot of just getting people into the park, serving them food, the Brewers as a sports team, of course, have a large analytical and data team. So not only are we responsible for the in-game experience, we also provide all the infrastructure for our data teams. So we're constantly evolving and with whatever they need, and it's exciting. It's been a great 3+ years, and happy to be here today.
What do you say there, Steve?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you everyone for coming out. This could be fun. As Eric mentioned, I'm Steve Totzke, Vice President of IT for the Wisconsin Center District. You may not know the Wisconsin Center District by name, but you probably know the buildings that we own and operate: the Miller High Life Theater, UWM Panther Arena, and then the Wisconsin Center Convention Center. As Eric mentioned, our arena hosts several sports teams, the Milwaukee Admirals, of course, and then we have the Milwaukee Wave, UWM Panthers basketball team, and then the Brew City Bruisers roller derby. So in addition to the venues, each one has pretty unique IT requirements. With the convention center, conventions and meetings, the theater, we have shows and concerts, and then of course the arena with the sports, but we also have concerts in there, assemblies and meetings as well. So it's kind of whole wide variety of IT needs, and it's a lot of fun to work there. Always something new to see, a new event or a new show, and yeah, happy to be here and share my experience.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Matt.
Well, thanks for having me too.
Well, thanks for jumping in 2 hours ago. Very much appreciated.
Well, my name is Matt Rolfe. I've been in the sport industry for about 8 years, I think. I started with the Pistons, and ironically, I was hired because I don't know basketball, or at least the time I didn't, right? So the Pistons want to revamp their old home at the time, the Paddle of Auburn Hills, and I got to have the pleasure of building Little Caesars Arena, designing the network, and implementing it there. And I thought I wanted another go of it, so I helped with this arena, and fell in love with the city. So I've been here, I guess now the 4th season. It's hard to keep track with the bubble because spend time down there. I lost track of almost a year now, I felt like. But same kind of thing with Steve. We go through all kinds of different events. One day you've got motocross in the arena with dirt covering the floor, to ice, to which we have a lot lately with Disney on Ice, and then to hardwood. So it's kind of fun being in IT in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting about it is that on the stage you represent many years or many ages of your facilities, right? I mean, when we were talking about this, Matt, I said to Matt that the forum is 3 years old. I said, so you're the new one. You're the new one. And he corrected me. He was like, not when it comes to technology, right? It goes so fast. And you said, look at Sophie, right? But then the next down in line would be American Family. I'm going to do that for as long as I'm alive. American Family Field is already 20
plus years old.
20 plus years old. And then, of course, I get to work in the arena, and the Beatles played there. So we're talking a few years. So you have different types of challenges. Are there, before we jump into some of the things that we talked about, are there any personal things or fun stories you want to tell about your facilities, or some personal experiences?
I have people on my team younger than when Big Blue crashed in '99. So when you put that in perspective, they weren't even born yet when that happened. So that's, amazing to think. So. Yeah, so we're going through a major infrastructure renewal. It's been pretty much, 3 to 5 year project to do that, so we can keep up with the times and make sure we're providing the infrastructure to provide the services and fan experience, we aim to drive.
Yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that.
As you know, with the arena and the circus, which is coming back again in May.
Can't wait.
I
want to walk around in the bottom.
It's always unique when you have to go into one of your IDFs, and the tiger cage is right outside the door of the IDF. So, luckily that's covered, so you can't see them, but you can certainly hear them in there. Elephants are kind of hanging out down in the lower level there, so it's always very unique and very scentful.
Very scentful.
Well, I guess the most horror stories I have are being yelled at by referees, or Sir Paul McCartney tossing an iPad across his dressing room because he wanted to use a remote because we went to the 2 new. So those are the fun ones, but it's always exciting.
All right. Well, I want to keep this conversational, which means that, yes, we can ask questions, but it's not just me asking questions. I want you to feel free. Listen, these are venues that you use all the time. Who's been to a Bucks game? All right. Go like this. There it is. He had to wear it, right? Who's been to a Brewers game? Admirals game? I bet I see a lot of hands. Wave game? Any of these, right? You've all been to the facilities. Learn a little bit about them, right? Because we need to, as technologists, we need to understand our business and how we can function using technologies. I mean, imagine this is all antiquated per the Fiserv forum guy, and you look at Sophie like with the Super Bowl. Thank you. Yeah. So that's why they don't want me to be president anymore. I keep forgetting stuff. Anyway, so please ask questions. Just give me one of these and jump in. Now, the way we're going to start off here is it's an important baseline, but I don't want to focus on it. But the sports and entertainment businesses were all impacted dramatically, more than anybody, I think, with the pandemic. So we'll start there, and we'll kind of grow in a positive motion, right? So let's start down at this end with you, all right? When everything hit the fan 2 years ago, how did that impact the business, your people? How did you have to pivot, which is the word of the year that year, right? But how did it hit you in the Fiserv Forum?
Well, it literally happened after one game. We got the call from the league that all games are suspended, and everybody is to not be in the office. The league made the call for that on us. So it became the next day, on a Friday, everybody showed up at the main office and started working on our mechanism to get everybody to work remotely. And we started a BYOB, bring your own, bring your BYOD, sorry. I'm already onto the next hour. But we pivoted very quickly, got everybody remotely. Our sales team, which had worked in an old mentality that you will be at your desk from 8 to 5, you will do these metrics, quickly moved from being, okay, now you're remote. Let's look at the metrics, your sales, how you sell, as opposed to button seat time. How do we get the phone system to work? So I deployed Jabber instantly, right? Took it in about that same 4-hour period while the rest of our team was getting everyone else to work remotely. And then we had to figure out how do we do the games. And the league kind of helped us out with that by putting on suspension. But the big thing was for us, that's when the Bucks were heavily represented in the bubble. Myself and my boss included, who is not here today, we all got to work down there. And we just looked from even our DJ Sean is down there, heavily represented. Our entire game ops person who does all the presentation was down there. Most of our ballroom attendants were down there as well. So what was really good is what the league did is if we volunteered to go, they would pay our salary for the Bucks. So the Bucks were able to absorb that a lot nicely. The league was paying for us to be down there. So, but it was quite a big change, and we did it rapidly.
Steve?
When I think it was early March, and we had a board meeting on that Friday. I remember our CEO, Marty Brooks, saying that so far nothing is canceled yet, and he told that to our board members. And literally, I think that afternoon, just started coming in waves, events being canceled. And I think that next week everything was canceled. And so for literally through the end of December, pretty much, we didn't have any events going on. With the big exception of the DNC that July, which pretty much scaled everything back down and only ended up using the Wisconsin Center as the venue to do their virtual convention. But yeah, we laid off a majority of the staff, eliminated a lot of positions, unfortunately. We worked from home for the people that could, but really I was considered an essential employee. Another member of my team was, the rest were laid off, and we kept coming in to the office through that whole time. Was lockdown. And like Winston Churchill said, never waste a good crisis, right? We luckily took that opportunity to do a lot of work, IT work with cleaning closets, restructuring network best practices and things like that, because when you have no events and nobody in the building, it's pretty easy to bring things down and do your work. So that was one good silver lining that came out of the whole thing.
Well, we're hoping that there's a lot, right? There's a lot in the long run. Derek, what about you?
We were a week into spring training. I happened to be down there at the time. We got the call, and typically the phone system down there handles a few calls a day. It's usually pretty quiet. And I just remember as soon as they had canceled it and the flood of calls that came in, we were scrambling to find phones and do whatever we could, and whoever was down there to take the calls to deal with the cancellations that were coming in. Once we got back to Milwaukee, then it was deploying a remote force that was pretty much, all desktop in office space. So we were scrambling to find old laptops, broken or not, to deploy them to sales teams and office staff that weren't typically using laptops. Which then the next problem came is our VPN couldn't handle the traffic. So we deployed some edge routers for our phone system, increased our bandwidth, and eventually got things stable. And at the same time, migrated to the cloud from on-prem email to cloud email. So we did all that in a very short period of time, and then it all worked out.
Does anybody have any questions? Because I know that there's a bunch of things that pop into mind for me. No? Is this how it's going to be all afternoon? Come on, John. You don't have any questions?
Yeah.
What happened to you? So I guess how did you, and this any three of you can take this. Derek, if you want to start. So you're in a crisis. You have to find different equipment. You have to find what's going through your head. I got to find different equipment. I got to send 200 people home. I've got to do this. Oh, by the way, I have these budgets, and these were my priorities. I think I'm going to have to reshift these. I have no idea how long this is going to last. I mean, take that. What was going through your mind, and what were really what were the priorities that popped up to say, you know what? I'm a leader because I'm a decision maker, and these are the things that I believe are the keys.
The difficult thing, we had to do all that, but the first question I got was, you need to lay off half your staff, so you have to decide that. So before we could do all of our redeployments and work, I had to pick the half the staff that I had to furlough. So that was definitely a difficult decision. And don't spend any money on any of this, or spend very little money to get what you need done. So we did a lot of scrambling. Thankfully, I have a great team, and we just set our priorities straight and worked hard and fast to get things done.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, what he said. No, yeah.
Wow, we're
definitely.
going to get to the bar really quick.
Yeah, we all want to get to the bar. That definitely was the most difficult part, was laying off the staff and figuring out who has to stay and who has to be furloughed. For us, we were largely desktop based before this happened, and we had very few laptops to go around. Fortunately, a lot of people, when they did go home to work from home, had desktops that they could use to access remote desktop. So they were able to do that. What few laptops we had, we gave to the staff that didn't have laptops. A large portion of us still were coming into the office even when it was on lockdown, so that helped there too. But yeah, it was hard. And when we were doing projects around, I had to literally wring a few cents out of my CFO to get a couple of things, but it was very, very slim, and we was pretty much don't spend anything unless you absolutely positively have to.
Yeah. What do you think, Matt? What did you hear from your position?
Well, it was okay. Yeah, we're firing 40% of the staff. Is the other thing. By the way, you're also taking a 40% pay cut. So that was the other thing we got. So that was the hardest part. But the other thing was, two of us with no money, right? Same idea. My idea was, hey, I did this already for the Pistons. We already want a system where we went to the BYOD system. So, okay, we get our people home. Everybody has Macs. Everybody has their phones. We can get them on the software they need. Just give them a stipend to run on their own hardware. And that's why we were able to implement very quickly. It was begging for money for the unfortunate $1,000 certificate you need to get some of the stuff running. But we were already on cloud. It just went us much faster into Teams. We were already using it, but it was just instantly moved us there. No longer VPN. All shares were put on OneDrive, and same kind of situation. Multi-factor was implemented at the same time to protect all that, so we make sure we're okay. We installed a more powerful WAF in front of it, so since our CRM is still unfortunately on premise, we wanted to make sure we weren't, because it was never exposed before, so we want to make sure that was protecting. So it's mostly how do we do this safely, but again, with no cost.
Did you get any concessions from any of your vendors?
Some, and those vendors are still vendors because of that.
Yeah, some of our vendors let us kind of extend payments out for things, or delay payment for 6 months, things like that. So we did get help in that regard.
Well, we had a few for sure, either delayed or were able to change terms quickly. So that was always helpful.
problem in this industry is a lot of your vendors are also your sponsors, so you have to make goods in your contracts. So it's hard to, get concessions that way.
Who were, Steve, I think you said it, that you were considered essential.
Expendable, essential.
Is it the same thing? So who's considered essential when this kind of thing happens? I mean, you have a huge facility. You have to take care of it. People have to go on site. But I mean, just real quick, I mean, who stays? Who goes?
So for our facility, it was me and a member of my IT team, just so we could maintain things and basically also just to do some work. And then a lot of the facilities guys, security. When the buildings are empty, we still got to heat them, still got to cool them, still got to keep them lit, and you need people on site to do that, unfortunately, in the pandemic like that.
Derek?
Infrastructure security remained, because we still didn't know, we didn't have fans, but the baseball was still going to happen at some point, so we had to make sure that the venue was still ready. But anything ticket sale related, so CRM, project management, or anything about spending money, we cut, or if we had redundancy, we would have to let one go by seniority. But that's more or less where we were. Point of sale we didn't need because we weren't really selling anything,
Right.
so we had to let them go.
Matt, what did you see?
For us, it changed when we got out of the bubble. Right? So who can actually set up a game became a big thing. Who can actually set up the broadcast? Because we had there's still an in-game production because you still have to have when we had no fans, it was how do you make it look like there's fans there in a way. But that crew was very small, and so we having the senior engineers do work that normally a rigger would do, and that was a little more challenging. And it became more challenging when we had COVID go through our staff, right? So how do you cross-train? Cross-train was big, and that's what it just became, good thing was the boss got it first, so it wasn't me. So, so then that started the whole conversation, how do we cover those roles? And how do we work remotely while we're still dealing with it? So it changed throughout as we got more staff.
Well, and that's actually a good segue to the next part of this that we talked about. So that's really how it impacted the businesses internally and the locations internally. But what about from a customer experience perspective? You don't have fans, but Matt, you said we have to pretend that there's fans. So really, I mean, that's a real. You didn't have any fans, right? But did you have any types of events that you could have or I don't know. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but what happened with the customer experience stuff? Is it at that time that you started to evaluate? Did you start looking at it going, ooh, if we have baseball in a month, we're going to have to do it this way? Or, I don't know. There's a lot to that, and I know that we're going to be getting to some of the future stuff, but when that happened, were there things that were like, we can shut down all 600 POS stations, right? We don't need to do that. But are you going to just let that stuff sit for a year?
Yeah, that was a difficult decision. They were ready to open, I'd say every month they were looking out at that, and and there was a determination that it wouldn't happen at all in 2020, so they were able to make those decisions. Just to get the game back, there was the awkwardness of silence that they had to deal with, and so with Major League Baseball's help, came up with the crowd noise, which they were evolving. So that was a very interesting, regression and progression of how that works with the players, because the players hated the silence, so they had to backfill with some noise, and so they end up working with a video game company to pull tracks out of video games, because they had already kind of figured that out. To then they handed it on I believe they gave an iPad to every club and said, plug it into your sound system and play it back for the players. And that was kind of the first gen of it, and then they evolved it during the season.
With the cutouts, right?
And then the cutouts, which,
Cutouts?
yeah, was
Had to
our
feel like-
sponsorship hated that because they had to put them all up themselves. But
Anything more from you guys?
Well, like I said, the big thing was silence. It was weird when the event ended, right? It literally shut off the crowd noise and it just dead silence, and it just wasn't right. The same thing in the bubble, right? It had 3 different arenas, but when the game was over between them, there was no more crowd noise, and that's kind of why we like working in this industry, is because we like hearing the crowds cheer. But I'm not going to lie, I didn't mind not having to convert, because when we go from a game from Bucks to Marquette, it's a complete tear out, right? We got to take out everything. But I worked to actually make sure we keep the same table, we kept everything in place, so it made conversions a lot easier on us technologically, and the clock, everything stayed in place between conversions, and that I miss, because now we're going, Bucks Marquette concert, Bucks Marquette, and that's a lot of 20-hour days for our people. So, but that was the big one.
For us, we're unique in that for these two guys that we don't run the fan experience for the 4 teams in the building. We just basically do the buildings. But for us, when everything canceled, we tried to fill our building with anything that we could that would generate revenue. DNC obviously helped a lot. In July, December, we got in our building, unfortunately or fortunately, the Milwaukee County ballot recount. So they were in our convention center doing that, and then so that provided a source of revenue. And then we had in January started the mass vaccination clinic. We did roughly like 145,000 vaccinations. That was a big help revenue-wise as well, because they were in our building for about 3 months. And then really, again, like you mentioned, the silver lining, another silver lining to come out of it is the Beyond Van Gogh exhibition that we had from June through January, which has been our highest grossing event we've ever had. That's probably an event we would not have had the pandemic not happened, because the exhibition hall is usually so busy with conventions and things. It was just sitting empty, and we were approached by the Beyond Van Gogh people, and we said, yeah, we got space, fill it. And that was, it turned out to be a great event for us.
So basically yeah, go ahead.
Quick question for the Fiserv and American Family Field. Who was running the iPad to determine what sound effects came out at what time?
So, if I might, I'll take that first. Actually, the NBA did a little differently. There was a company they hired called Firehouse Productions, but it was actually using the engine for NBA 2K. So it was taking the live score off the clock and was saying, okay, this is what's happening. They just got a 3-pointer, was a dunk, because they can get that call classification, so it makes sounds according to what NBA 2K would do.
we had one of our, I think it was one of our board operators that typically be running our LED boards, but since there weren't fans, they were converted into running the iPad. And at the same time, Major League Baseball built an app so fans at home could interact, kind of the cheer app, they called it, so they could somehow influence what would be played back on the stadium. I don't think it ever worked great, but they were trying to at least keep the fans at home engaged with what's happening at the stadium.
And not to plug another sponsor, but the team's virtual fans was huge, especially in the bubble. A lot of teams did that after the bubble. We did not, but that was actually kind of a cool thing, because when I worked the bubble, I got to have like President Obama and then Snoop Dogg on the back. I'm like sitting next to Snoop Dogg today, So, but it was kind of cool.
And yeah. Ladies first.
Oh, no, you can.
Ingrid, I saw your hand first.
All right. Call me out by name.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious if there's anything like, after 2 years, looking back on it 2 years later, is there anything that 2 years ago you would have thought technologically wise that you wouldn't have been in a place where you are now, right? Like, you fast forward 2 years and you had to implement a whole lot of stuff really fast. Is there anything that you were like, I wish I could be there? Like, think about January of 2020. I wish I could be there, but I'm not there. And then suddenly you had to implement something really quickly, and now you're glad that you're there 2 years later?
For me, it's the virtual working. I think we should have done it a long time as an organization. We implemented it at the Pistons, and it helped the sales crew a lot. And it forced this organization to realize that people don't need to be at their desk to be productive. And I'm glad we're there now and still there.
I think for us, it's laptops. We were largely desktop-based before the pandemic, and now I'm only going to get desktops for like assistants or people who don't necessarily ever need the laptop. But it's so difficult to get them now too. It's, I would have gone out and bought 100 laptops in January.
I think it was more the philosophy of being able to do things quickly, using the pandemic as kind of the reason. So we were able to use that excuse to say, hey, you're getting a new this, or we have to do this really quickly. Now we're back in a normal state. We're doing more due diligence and planning things out a little bit more, which is not bad, but sometimes just doing it and getting it out and let the users adapt quickly is a nice thing to have.
I was kind of in the same vein, but I mean, I remember 2020 was supposed to be the year Milwaukee grew up. The Bucks were in first place by a lot. We were going to host the DNC. It was supposed to be a $500 million influx of money to our city, and all of a sudden it all goes away. Bucks lose their momentum. Wisconsin Center District loses a lot of, news vans from around the world were converged on Milwaukee. So I was wondering for Steve, what kind of technology upgrades did you have to do in advance of the DNC to get it ready for that kind of prime time? And then, did you get to keep all that stuff?
That's the real question.
Right? Is it coming into be valuable now?
We had a lot planned before pandemic. Of course, when the pandemic hit, everything was put on hold. And so we ended up not really doing anything we had planned because we didn't even know if DNC was going to be happening at all. And they really didn't make that decision until, maybe a month or two before the event. We kind of found out it's going to be okay, virtual. With DNC, the way that they ended up working is they brought all their own infrastructure anyway. The convention center, it's just like the American Family Field. It's hard to think. It was built in '98, so a lot of that infrastructure is getting old. It's multimode fiber between all the IDFs. So we had planned on upgrading a lot of that, but because we didn't have the money to do it, DNC brought in and pulled the fiber all throughout the entire building. They did do some upgrades, which they kept. That was part of the deal. Any modifications they made to the facility, we could keep, or they'd have to pay to have it returned back to the original state. So we did keep some upgrades, things like they put in mouse holes and with fire blocking and things like that, some fiber. But for the most part, they put all in their own stuff and took it all out when they left.
So I'm going
Took it all out.
So I'm going to actually hop off your question about being us most advanced. We actually were too advanced for the DNC. They wanted to come in and run a whole coax TV plant for us because they couldn't accommodate our IPTV system. So that was going to be my frustration point. I'm kind of glad it didn't happen because I didn't want to have coax all over my building where we were already completely IP. But it did allow us a lot to help us out in the finals because they paid AT&T. Well, actually, I think AT&T did on their own, but they put a bunch of 5G small cells all around the Deer District, right? So coming to the finals, when you have 100,000 people outside your arena, and you need to have ticket scanning out in the middle of nowhere, AT&T stood up. So not to plug another sponsor, but that was nice to have that infrastructure because if it wasn't there, we'd have been running fiber. So.
That AT&T ended up doing that when DNC committed to coming for the virtual convention. They came in, put a bunch of 5G microsites inside the facility, and they left those there obviously when it was over with. So that was a nice upgrade to have.
Good. It's a great segue because the next thing that we were going to talk about was the age of the facilities and doing changes, updates. What are the challenges? What are the good things, whether it be new or whether it be elder, experienced, whatever you want to call it. But through all this, you've had the opportunity to do updates, regardless of a DNC or whatever. But when you look to the future and you think about updates, what are the key challenges that you have? Maybe share a challenge that you had that you overcame. How did you do it? But this is where we kind of swing the conversation to moving forward and not living in a pandemic. Let's
see. The first season that I got there, that'd be 2018, 2019, we started our conversion from multi-mode to single-mode fiber. So that was the first of our big infrastructure projects. We still have a coax plant right now, which we are in the process of converting, going to IP-based TV on that. So that is, probably one of the older infrastructures in the state of Wisconsin that Spectrum supports. So we'll be very happy to get off that. I think we're in our third generation Wi-Fi, second generation DAS. So some of it's is already being refreshed after being refreshed once. But the core infrastructure of our broadcast system is still pretty new. And so we're challenged as of filling up conduit space and paths, and cable trays are getting filled. So we're running into issues where when we end up trying to find that, we're going to have to start ripping out cable to get more paths in. So that's going to be a different challenge we face.
So for us, with the three different buildings at three varying ages, we have the theater, which is built in 1909, extensively renovated in 2003. That actually is in pretty decent shape as far as infrastructure goes. When they renovated it, they put in proper IDFs, a new cable plant, multi-mode fiber, unfortunately, but we are replacing that actually this year with single-mode fiber. The arena was built in 1950. They never made any provisions for IT service back then. And that is probably our most challenging building, just because it is old, it is thick concrete, and we pretty much have IDFs wherever we can find space, janitor closets, a laundry room, any wall space that we can put a Hoffman box on that we've done to make some infrastructure. So that's a difficult building to run infrastructure in. But however, we are upgrading the Wi-Fi in there, Wi-Fi 6 compliant this year. That's underway right now. And then with the convention center, like I said, built in 98, that cable plant is getting old as well. We have a lot of multi-mode fiber we need to get replaced. But if you've been downtown by the convention center in the last month or two, you'll see that we're expanding the convention center. A $420 million expansion of the convention center is underway. We're going to double the size of it. All new infrastructure, obviously, with the expansion, and then we're going to be tying onto that and replacing a lot of that infrastructure in the south building as well. We're calling it the south building, not the old building. It's the south building. And then so everything's on the same playing field when it comes to infrastructure, so we don't have any disparity between shows depending on the speeds and things that they need. So we're taking care of that right now. Again, of course, with convention center, Wi-Fi is a big deal, so we are probably in the second or third gen Wi-Fi there, Wi-Fi 6 all around in that facility too.
So this being the second arena that I've been, also I didn't really build this one, came in later to the fact on it, but the term that any network engineer hates to hear when you're designing a new system is value engineered. That's the problem with this arena, right? I mean, they're cost effective, did a great job, built a great facility. Problem is a lot of facilities were value engineered out. We found out during the finals and playoffs we were very low on fiber. Should have probably had 4 to 5 times as much per each IDF. And coming out for broadcast, we had nothing outside the building. We had to do a lot of running through doors, a lot of running through the ceiling and that kind of thing, get out to especially the south of the building. And it just wasn't designed for it. But we're learning, right? So the problem is, we saved $20,000 in construction, but now it costs us $2 million to fix that. So how do we correct that moving forward? That's exactly what we're working on, especially with the new hotel being built. How do we get those connectivities? Because you know we're going to have something to be done over there. You can't always, in this industry, you can never say never, right? Oh, we'll never do that. Oh no, they'll find some way to put some kind of security thing in a corner of an intersection you had no idea before. So you have to be ready for that in its versatility. Even a brand new building, we were the first arena to go live with IP-based broadcast. But that doesn't mean we're integrated, right? So you look at SoFi has an entirely integrated network where it's completely unified. Even they called our network unified. It's the most unified I've been on any network thus far because you actually have your building controls, your security, everything on a single network plant. But broadcast is its own core, and it's still using the same kind of technology where the thought process is, okay, we'll do either a triax or a SMPTE connection back to broadcast. Well, we're doing it the same way, but now it's an Ethernet connection. So how did we advance? All right, so now we have that same problem. So in finals, okay, we need to have a 3G HDSDI camera out in what they call lot 5. How do we get that feed out there? How do we make everything live? So it's now running a lot of fiber, a lot of getting tens to 100 gigabit bandwidth out to middle of nowhere, and that's kind of, even our building isn't capable of that yet, but we're getting there. Oh, and the other weird thing is our Wi-Fi. Yeah, we designed it really coolly. So everyone asks, okay, how many access points you have in an arena? And I can say I have 620. But that 620. But that's not an actual good answer, because the way our Wi-Fi is designed is we take both 5 gigahertz antennas and use them both as individual access points. We actually have more like 890 active radios. Well, now that we split the access points and the antennas, we can't go Wi-Fi 6 because it requires both spectrums.
So Derek, how many access points do you have?
They just finished that last year, and I'm thinking it's in the 800 range. I don't know exactly how many it is, but they did go Wi-Fi 6, and a lot of tuning. I think we spent all last year tuning up into postseason. So it was as efficient as possible.
Steve?
We have roughly 300 access points through our 3 buildings. Yeah, most are Wi-Fi 6. Some are still the older gen, but we're slowly replacing all those.
Yeah, I think we're going to probably dig into that just a little bit more, a little bit down the road here. Any questions about upgrades or challenges or nothing? Go for it.
So over the past 2 years, you talked a lot about adaptation. Basically what came at you, you did, right? So how do you, when it comes to like projecting in the future, do you project 3 years out, 5 years out for technology advances? And then at the same time, do you kind of mimic other stadiums when you go to look at things that they might be doing, or is it something you kind of take on yourself and say, no, I want to put in this system, or how does that work?
Well, a lot of it is actually, it's one-upmanship, right? So it's, everyone's got to have the nice, newest thing. And when you revamp an arena and you say, okay, now we're putting in Wi-Fi 6, the press release isn't as big as, oh, we did a $141 million revamp of the suite level. It's just not as impressive to people. But yes, as far as the back end, we are always looking at how to improve. And it's at SoFi, we were trying to drive the same kind of integration with our system because out of necessity, not because we wanted to do the newest, it's because we're doing things the building wasn't designed to do. And as far as looking at upgrades, right now we're kind of more reactionary because it's kind of like along the lines of what do we need to do to actually make sure we can handle this again and not have people be at the building 50 hours straight. And how do we help the fan experience be better this coming season? Because we had a lot of bottlenecks, right? How do we have a lot of people having bad experience being out in the plaza? How do you get them in in a more streamlined manner? How do we make ticket transfers more seamless? So there's a lot of the technology we have to work on the back end is more programmatically than structural changes. And I don't think I answered your question well, but there you go.
I think I go with it. It's a lot of reactionary stuff. I'd love to plan upgrades, but sometimes it just doesn't happen that way, and we just react to what the latest thing is. Like and with our building, especially the arena being so old, it's difficult to do anything in there. With the Wi-Fi upgrades that we're doing this year, a lot of that's because of the new POS system, and we're doing a lot of POS terminals wirelessly because it's just too difficult to run hard lines to all these POS terminals. So Wi-Fi was the way to do it. With the exhibition hall, with the expansion, we're planning for Wi-Fi 6E, even though that really isn't out there yet a lot. But we have a big problem in the convention center with hotspots. When meetings come in, usually have a room like this, you could have 30 hotspots all blasting out a Wi-Fi signal, and we're trying to do our Wi-Fi for the client or for the presenter or just for our staff with their tablets and things, and we run into a tremendous amount of interference. So anytime we can find a way to increase the spectrum that we can utilize, we try and take advantage of that, and that's why we're planning for 6E because it's a bigger spectrum. So yeah, a lot of it's reactionary. Wish we could plan out and do all these cool upgrades every year, but sometimes it doesn't happen like that.
with our relationship with the stadium district, that's the owner of the property, they require on certain investments, such as the main video board and our audio system, that we have to be at a certain level as compared to all the other 30 clubs. I think we have to be in the 75th percentile for board size and age of equipment before we'll make that investment, or they'll help us make that investment. We're right at the cusp for our main board, so we're hoping within 2 years that will get replaced. And we certainly look at other stadiums on what they're doing, what the latest technology is, and how sponsorship plays into that, because so much of what we do, of course, is sponsorship driven. The audio system, we're in RFP right now, so we're hoping in 2 years we'll have an all new sound system for the stadium. And then, we visited other stadiums, looked at other venues on the latest and greatest there. So that's certainly one aspect of what we do. I think you know the rest.
894, I think, was the amount of Wi-Fi.
I knew it was 800 something.
It was, yeah, and then.
I've got a question. So when you are making those decisions on, tech refresh or infrastructure upgrades, is there any consideration for any, leveraging it for any new revenue generation streams? Maybe like an RG Nets for, guest access to, push, from a marketing standpoint, other opportunities, or even for that matter, a mobile app capability to, expedite concession sales and things like that.
You hit it on the head, nail it on the head. That's exactly, most of the decisions are that way, right? So that's why the Bucks actually went to 100% mobile ordering during reduced attendance, is we wanted to actually streamline the experience and not just have it say, hey, we want to order this burger, therefore go to this stand. It's 100% fulfillment. But we found some bottlenecks in there, and also customer education was a challenge at that point. But that's exactly what it is. Who wants to pay for that? And we had actually our concessionaire wanted to fund that because they wanted to learn the experience and use it as a playground. So that's exactly why we did it. And as far as monetizing Wi-Fi, yes, we'd love to. Problem is we compete with our own Wi-Fi, right? We have a very good cellular DAS, and it's very difficult to get people to want to come onto our Wi-Fi when they've got great cellular coverage. And you can try to monetize that, but any kind of friction you put between your uptake, you're losing that uptake anyway, right? So yes, you can get, say you get 30% of people join your Wi-Fi in your attendance, but beyond that, only 20% go past the sign-on screen that you didn't monetize anything. So, I mean, that's that kind of stuff.
And much like Matt, with our arena, the new POS system with the Wi-Fi upgrades is going to allow mobile ordering, so that's driving that as far as revenue generating. The convention center, we make money on the Wi-Fi because we sell it to the conventions coming in. They either do a buyout for their attendees or use it for the clients. But you're right, we definitely compete with our DAS. We have a great DAS with 4 carriers in our building, so hence all the reason for the hotspot. So we try and make our Wi-Fi enticing to purchase. We do analytics on the Wi-Fi for the show, so afterwards we can do a full analytics, and we can tell like where people were congregating at certain booths or going certain areas of the convention hall. We provide that full analytics capability. We also do custom splash pages, redirects, all that. So we try and make our Wi-Fi do some value add to it so that they're going to purchase it instead of just rely on the DAS, which we also have to have because people want their cell phones to work obviously in the building, so we can't just shut it off. So.
I guess another topic, ditto what they said, is we've added a lot of LED boards, which are a big part of our revenue generation. So that's been something over the last few years. We've added a few more boards. Sponsors love that. And as we're moving into our new IP TV phase, we think that's a big revenue generation possibility for us. We're not leading with it. I think it's going to follow once we get it and prove it out. Wi-Fi for us which is very nice, all paid for by Major League Baseball to have a consistent fan experience across the sport. So it's something that they provide for us, so we don't need to try to recoup those costs on that.
Good. All right. So the comeback, getting back to reality, getting back to what we think is the new normal, right? Let's talk internally. What are you doing? What are the decisions being made? What kind of changes are you making? I'm talking about, how are you getting employees back? How are you, what are you providing? Are you allowing them to be remote? Are you, technology-wise, are you providing them anything? I mean, what does that look like internally? Are you changing your infrastructure because we're not coming back? You know what I mean? What kind of decisions are you making for your internal staff, getting ready to get back to the season?
One thing we did, which was kind of a double win for us, was we changed out our firewall, which added more security across the whole network, and at the same time made our VPN process far easier. So no more fobs and tokens and all those things that we had to worry about before. So now with the numerous laptops and people working at home and more flexible schedules, we wanted to make sure getting on the VPN was much easier and smooth. So we went to a full Okta-based VPN solution so once they sign in once, they're already into their VPN, and there's no extra time. So that's been a very smooth process for us.
For us, it's deploying more laptops. Being event-based, it's hard to work from home, event-based business, so majority of people are back at the buildings. We're a lot more flexible, though. If you're not feeling well, work from home, or if you're not feeling well, take a sick day. If you have to stay at home for sick kids or whatever, there's a lot more flexibility. And then having we upgraded a firewall as well through the pandemic, and with remote desktop, and our CRM has always been cloud-based, so that helps there. But just being more flexible with the staff. But for the most part, people are back, happy to be back, and we're getting busy again.
And that's a good question, Steve. So when have you started to move? You mentioned something about something on-prem, but had you moved more things to the cloud because of the remote, or even not?
We were cloud-based for everything. Actually, shortly before the pandemic, we moved email to Office 365. So luckily, that was complete before the pandemic. We rolled out Teams and everything before then, and our CRM is cloud-based. So we really were already in a good position that way. It was just beefing up the firewall and making sure it was accessible at a decent, enough capacity for all the employees.
So I kind of used a phrase that I coined. I don't know if I coined it, but I used at the Pistons, called "Think Outside the Firewall," because we had 4 venues we supported, and 2 of them are outdoors, and people are always moving from one venue to another. And it was a different user experience at every single location, and that drove me nuts, right? Because I don't want a person to have to sit down with their laptop and say, okay, I am here today, therefore I must do this to do my job. No. The person needs to think, I want to do my job. So IT needs to remove those obstacles and make it the same wherever they are. And that's been my philosophy of how we're moving back. No matter where they sit down, no matter where they go, they will always do the job the same way every time. You don't have to think, okay, this is not my phone today. How do I log in? So it's now all on unifying that experience, because right now we have 2 separate phone systems. We have Teams and we have Cisco. How do we unify them? And done a pretty good job of getting some of that, but the problem is, there's another direction around that. How do we get Teams? And now we got Cisco work with Teams, and now we get Teams to work with Cisco. So how do we get that more hoteling kind of attitude going? How do we make it so people can, when they print, they just print? They don't say, okay, now I'm in Schlitz Park, therefore I must print to Schlitz Park printer 01. No, that's not name it these things. Let's make it just somebody just wants to do their job, and that's what we're pushing very hard. Now we've got a crew that actually believes in that, because once they saw it in action, they're like, oh yeah, it's so much easier not to have to tell them, okay, you don't need to be on VPN today. So we're pretty much trying to eliminate VPN everywhere we go, more to a zero trust type environment, or a client, but mostly this fact that it just isn't a need for VPN. So what the person's workflow is, the only people we can really not have to do that with is broadcast, right? Because if they're working from home, they have to work in multi-terabit files in order to do the melt for the game, to get the commercials ready and get everything for the video boards going. They kind of need direct access for that still. But we've even eliminated that by using some other remote access tools that actually use multi-factor. Multi-factor has been big, so it's been more security-minded for people in our business lately, is that they understand now, because previously nobody cared about the Bucks, right? So I mean, we were just this small market team that nobody cared about, and now everyone knows who Giannis is. Everybody knows who we are, and so that means they're trying to hack us all the time. So now we get people more interested in security training. How do we get them so they know, okay, now you're at your desk, you're actually talking to somebody at IT and not being social engineered. So that's been the big shift, is just try to make things more seamless yet still secure.
Any questions? Okay, so that's internally. So I get a sense that more people are coming back in because we're getting back to that interactive world, at least partially, right? What about from a customer experience perspective? Now we're talking about what are the expectations of the customer? Is it mobile cash? Is it mobile app? What is it? And how does that affect you?
Probably for all of us, since we're in the city of Milwaukee, it was a requirement to go cashless to reopen. So we quickly had to pivot there, and at the same time, it was a good opportunity to try out mobile ordering. So that was for the 21 season when we reopened. We started testing mobile ordering and a cashless environment. So that was definitely, I think they wanted to go cashless for a while. It's just so much easier. But really making the experience as good as possible. So we worked with MLB's team that works on the Ballpark app, which is the league-wide ticketing and all things venue app. So we worked quickly to get that integrated so we could really make sure the customer experience, not just the ordering part, but all the way from ticket ordering and the ticketing transaction as seamless as possible. We were kind of more paper-based, I'd say, than more of the other clubs had been. So for us, it was a little bit bigger jump on the ticketing side, but it certainly was pretty smooth. And I think we'll continue to move into a more digital process going into this season as well.
So the app is actually MLB, not specific to the Brewers.
Correct.
And it's for ticketing and
ticketing and venue experience.
Can you explain the venue experience?
Sure. So interacting with, if there's in-game, usually sponsors will do activations, ballpark bingo, and other kind of interactive games that might be as part of your stadium. Also, food finder, maps, other information about your venue that might either pertain to the season or for that game itself. If there's maybe a bobblehead pickup, it'll then lead you the right way.
Very similar, going cashless was a big push, and the new POS system that we're implementing right now is for mobile, or to have the mobile ordering capability. Though for you, the Admirals, an unintended consequence of cashless, which we were just discussing this week, was with the school day games and the kids coming in. That we had to we went to our caterer Levy, and we need to accept cash for these school day games because you're going to have all these school-age kids that don't have plastic, right? So they're going to have to do cash for those. So unintended consequences, right, of going to cashless. So we've implemented those. Also on the convention center side of things, we do a lot of youth sports in there, volleyball tournaments, wrestling, gymnastics. And since the pandemic, a lot of those are now streaming. So they'll have streaming devices each court or each wherever the games are going on, and they'll be streaming all those live so that people who can't or aren't able to attend can watch them via stream. So that has been something new that we've seen in the last year.
And for us, the same kind of thing. We had to go cashless, obviously, to open. And I've been kind of surprised by the lack of resistance to that. I remember back in 2008 when Apple refused to take cash for one of their iPhones and how much of a ruffled feather situation that was. But we're we're actually been pretty good in cashless. The online order, or the in-seat ordering system we used to have, I think of it when it was a beer button, right? Beer me, dude, was the promotion, and we can't do that because you can no longer. The health department says you can no longer pass anything down an aisle. So I don't know what you're going to have for hawkers at Brewers anymore, but that was completely banned in our building. So we have to be more creative. How do we expedite that? Because it's sponsored, right? So we have to have it. Otherwise, we have to do a make good. So the big thing was we finding that a lot of people actually don't like mobile ordering, which is another surprise, because I figured just streamlining the process for them, that you're going to get your order in 5 minutes at this location, go retrieve it. No, it's more been people do prefer the belly up and order the beer and order the burger. So to get past that kind of friction in the fan base is going to be still a little bit challenging, but we're working on it.
So I know that we've been talking a lot about Brewers, Bucks, Admirals, maybe basketball or whatever at the arena. We all work with concerts, and concerts are big, and they're going to be bigger. I know that we have some great shows coming here in the spring. How does that change things? You're not using the MLB app for, Eric Church. When you're preparing for a large event like that, how does that change anything? Because there's a lot of different tech that you're working with there.
Depending on who's coming in the promoter, so if it's a Live Nation event, it'll be on Ticketmaster. We're tickets.com. So they'll do everything. They'll bring in their own people, their scanners, and kind of run all their infrastructure for that. We are going to try to do a few concerts this year that's on tickets.com, so it actually will be through the ballpark app for your ticketed event. The Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Poison, Joan Jett concert will be on tickets.com. I'm not sure. Eric Church was just announced. I'm not sure what promoter that'll be. So we'll see kind of both sides of it. We like it when it's within our own system, because then we can capture the data. It's our scanning equipment we could use, so it's a known kind of operation when we can do that. The challenge will be the switch over, their needs, Wi-Fi, broadcast or not, and then tying into the sound system. But they do it enough, and it's pretty much a standard process that typically doesn't change a whole lot.
Yeah, a lot of it's support. Every act is different. We don't have quite a big concerts. We do get some pretty good names, and just it really depends on the artist and what they're bringing in. Some are very minimal, just a couple of Wi-Fi passwords. We have a Wi-Fi backstage that they can use. Others are more extensive. Like with AEW Wrestling, when they were in last fall, they brought in a whole Wi-Fi system that they set up in the arena. So it really depends a lot on
they wanted to use.
They wanted to use their own, right?
Really?
Yep. So and we talk to them, and we'll accommodate that when they need it. Obviously, we prefer to use ours because then it interferes with our stuff. But and they have valid points. They travel around a lot, and he said that it's just easier for them to have everything in one box, turn it on when they're there. They know it all works, and then turn it off and leave. So, but yeah, a lot of it depends on the artist.
So I'm going to say I like concerts better because it's actually a lot less work on our crew. We don't have to actually set up the floor. We don't have to put the clock out. We don't have to get the stats set up, and then we don't have to stay there to strike it. So for concerts, it's a lot easier. We have somebody who does what's called load in, is when the show shows up and we get them settled for the day. Then we had different set of people who do the event support. We finally have enough now to do kind of shift work like that. But a story of where it didn't happen back in the day at working for Palace Sports Entertainment was an example, is when event managers don't get us that off, because we've got 10 days coming up here starting tomorrow of 10 concerts in a row. So it's load in, concert strike, load in, concert strike. A constant rotation the next 10 days at 10 different acts. So an example of that at Pine Knob was one of my favorite event managers, just this really happy-go-lucky person. The event I had to work load in was Motley Crue, and they just came from Chicago. And you could tell they were pretty strung out on whatever they were doing the night before, and they were not in the best of moods, and their road Wi-Fi was not working. And of course, they called me angry, saying your network doesn't work, fix it, and all this fun stuff. So trying to work with troubleshooting it, and the first thing you learn when you do load-ins is you do not touch their gear. Because if you do, it's of course then you own it, it's your fault, and everyone gets angry during settlement that the venue has to pay now how many X $1,000 to repair their Wi-Fi when all it was a cable. But so I finally get them to admit that, hey, your cable's bad, will you let me fix it? So going through all that fun with them took about 2 hours. It was what came down to a cable inside their box that somehow worked last night. But got that fixed, and you could just tell it just running the poor event manager crazy because they were just high demand and everything else they wanted from her. Next day, she had to load in Wiz Khalifa, which of course, completely different crew, right? So they say, okay, load in 6 a.m. Okay, I'll show up there 6 a.m. No buses are there. I'll say, it's like, okay, so I'm sitting there waiting, I got things I can do. I got point of sale terminals I got to make sure function because, hey, somebody smashed one in anger because they were drunk, so I'll go and replace that. Still, if I run 9 o'clock, they start coming in. And get nobody to see that, nobody to talk to, all that fun stuff. So I finally get a hold of somebody from the event and say, okay, do you need network connections? Are you good with the Wi-Fi? Oh man, we're good, no worries, everything's okay. So I finally go check in the event manager, and because you got to tell them, hey, they got to tell me checked in, right? Then she's fast asleep on her couch in her office. So they're working that hard, they're there day in, day out. But that's, as far as IT, when we have enough staff, we can, they're a lot easier for us. And yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you have the same kind of demands from opposing teams? Now you have to deal with opposing teams all the time. So do you have standards dealing with them so that if they get on your Wi-Fi, it's secure? You give them secure connectivity. Nobody's trying to hack into somebody else's playbook or something.
So a little dirty secret: stay away from the Lakers.
All right.
No, so that was they're infamous in the bubble for being very needy technologically. So yes, we have to provide a minimum set of connections. The league now wants 4 Ethernet connections at the bench, and now 4 different video feeds of the team's choosing. So we also do the same thing in the locker room. The idea is then, so they would what's called sports coding. They code the actual game, have a video coach recording the event and taking clips and sending it to iPads up at the bench. But now that's pretty much done at the bench over iPads, over Ethernet. And we do have Wi-Fi there. I think it's because the league's trying to get the lowest common denominator because they don't mandate it like the MLB, that Wi-Fi must work with X amount of up and down at the bench. Because frankly, that's kind of the most challenging location in an arena to get it because you're not going to get a reliable signal off the center hung. You're too far from the retracts. I mean, how do you get coverage? But we do. So, but it's, some teams need nothing. They don't care. Some teams, basically, their stuff doesn't work and it's our fault. And that's very common. And we're usually troubleshooting their gear and it's not the network. But the problem with the league is if one team has a problem, you must deactivate both teams' equipment. And so we have to work very hard to prove that it's not a network problem, always proving that negative to make sure that our team, our home team, doesn't get shut down too. So that's kind of what we do. I don't know what MLB does.
We only care about the home team.
Exactly.
What about you?
For us, it's very easy because Major League Baseball runs the dugout technology, so anything in the dugout is their responsibility. So it's consistent. So the Wi-Fi, the iPads, any connectivity, it's all taken care of by them. And then somewhat in the clubhouse, if there's any video feeds, that's all MLB controlled, so we don't touch that. The few things we do work on, it's usually a printer printing the lineup card that breaks right before first pitch or something, so we'll have to run down there. But for us, it's very low touch for visiting teams.
Who takes care of the Brat House in Halford Field? Is that MLB or is that you?
That's us, yeah. Need some updating.
Yeah, we're pretty hands-off. Each team that we have in our building that has a contract specifies what to provide for the visiting team. Usually a hard line or Wi-Fi access, and if they want more, they can purchase it through us, but usually they don't, and it's pretty hands-off. For a lot of our games, if they're being streamed, they'll utilize our video crew and stream it through our internet, either through ESPNU or My24. Sometimes they'll bring in a TV truck, which we'll have to connect to, but it's more lower key than than MLB or NBA.
Oh, your time's coming. Well, you have a expansion happening. Yes. You're gonna have some good stuff there.
Yeah, we're doubling the size of the convention center. Like I said, we're going to have 300 square feet of contiguous exhibition space. So big
much?
area, 300 square feet contiguous. So
300?
yeah, 300 square feet. So it's going to be big. Yeah, and it's going to be we're going to be able to hold larger conventions, but it'll also allow us to hold multiple conventions. A lot of times with our event calendar, when we have like a big convention come in, they'll be blocking off several days for load in, having several days for load out on the end, and that blocks out the entire schedule for another convention. So this way we can have multiple conventions loading in, loading out at different times, and it'll give us a lot more flexibility. We'll have a second ballroom. It's going to be on the fourth. We're doing 4 levels, so it'll be on the 4th floor. It's going to be renderings are great. It's going to overlook the Deer District. It's going to overlook the skyline of the city. It's going to be great when that's all complete. So it's roughly doubling the size, a lot more meeting rooms. So it's going to be a great benefit to the city.
Awesome. Any new technologies going in?
Yeah, so we're planning for Wi-Fi 6E, even though it really isn't prevalent yet. And fiber everywhere, like you were just saying, you wish you put more fiber. And value engineering, I laughed at that because we're already starting to see some of that value engineering happening, and I'm going to push for as much single mode fiber as I can everywhere. And at the very least, I'm going to push for conduit, empty conduit, so that even if they don't pull the fiber now, I have an easy path to pull it. But yeah, I'm really pushing for as much fiber as I can, because I think if you pull, whatever you pull, you're going to need double that in a couple years.
Yeah, just like that.
Don't let them talk to you too much, go for it.
All right. Does anybody have any questions?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I know a little bit about the Brewers background, as Derek knows, but what are you guys doing technology-wise to try to combat ticket brokers, people that are trying to just buy tickets and resell it for a profit?
Oh, that's a long question. As you know, so MLB is working closely with Tickets.com to create a new environment for allowing ticket brokers and not allowing ticket brokers by doing things like rotating barcodes and other technologies to prevent the resale of tickets that shouldn't be. So that's one way. Having a centralized ticketing system is very beneficial for the league. So those clubs that are on Ticketmaster will be forced over to Tickets.com so they can help control the secondhand and tertiary markets as well.
Ticketmaster is very strong in that with what they call safe ticks. And that's where we talk about technology on expect in a new arena. We expect to work with safe ticks, but the ticket scanning hardware we have does not function with it. And so that's been a big problem. So we're already in an RFP phase for new ticket scanning hardware. And we have those pedestals, which people seem to like to do their own scanning. They've adopted quite well. At least those are. But the rest things, like the wonderful idea of having people scan in and out of their suites, was not compatible, and the handheld scanners were not compatible. But as far as how to get rid of the broker situations, that's kind of a complicated relationship, because sometimes you want brokers, right? Because if you have an inventory of tickets you can't move, you'll sell them at a discounted rate, and they're willing to take a potential loss at the resale. So with Ticketmaster, they do have authorized partners that we can actually say is a broker, and it's exactly as the situation. You're controlling the life cycle of that ticket. So Ticketmaster always knows who it goes. So that was actually the thing we wanted to do a long time ago, and it kind of took the mobile revolution to get there, because I can remember when we first started in the industry, it was like, how do we know who has what ticket so we can market to them, right? That's a big thing. You want to know the name of everybody in the seat so you can say, okay, this person's here they're always here for a jazz game, and they're always here for this artist. So how can we now leverage more advertising? Hey, we're getting this act in. Maybe they can sell them a ticket. That kind of idea is a final life cycle. So it's actually our ticket partners like the MLBAM or Tickets.com controls that very, very closely. But again, it's dirty little secret is we use them. So.
Oh, Brett.
So you're dealing with live events. So what's the worst system down experience you've had?
Justin Bieber. No, seriously, we talk about upgrading firewalls, right? So the Palace got our all nice new internet circuits, and from Comcast, whopping dual 300 meg circuit back then, woohoo! And we were hosting our own Wi-Fi system. And little did I know that at 5:30, when doors opened, 10,000 people came in immediately and onboarded, overloaded the firewall, brought down all credit card processing. So I had to quickly change routes off to a credit within the cores to route off to a cable modem out of a router for credit card processing, so we could still sell. It's very important to sell those T-shirts, you know. So that was the biggest one I ever had. I have not had one since then because I've gotten smarter in my career, but we've had some pretty close calls that have total system outage.
Actually, ours just happened, and it wasn't really an outage per se. We had a conference going on, and our main internet went out. We have backup, so it switched over to backup. But we were scrambling trying to figure out why the main internet was down, and we got online with our provider and ultimately found out it's like, oh, we disconnected you because of non-payment. And we're like, what? And so I thought I could blame an outage on accounting for once, but I wasn't. It turns out I went to accounting, we're like, no, we paid the bill, and he pulled out all the bills, and so it was a mistake on the provider's end. But fortunately, we try and plan, because you said like at live events, you really don't have the capability to have downtime, really, because it can affect the concert, it can affect a convention, a game. So we plan for that. We had backups, but yeah, that just actually occurred a few weeks ago. It's kind of funny.
The biggest event that I've heard of, it was before my time, was a backhoe had cut the fiber south of the stadium for both of our internet providers because they came in from the south. So I know there was a lot of, I think it was on an off day, so they scrambled to stand up cradle points and hotspots around. Since then, we've worked with our internet provider, provide a dual path into the stadium, and working on expanding that to not just a dual path into the stadium, but a regionalized backbone as well. So we're continuing to work on that process now to prevent any backhoes interrupting our internet.
Damn backhoes. Any other questions? Go ahead.
What about personnel turnover and replacing positions that left, especially after your furloughs or salary reductions? Have you had to, has it been a challenge to keep people and get the right skill sets in the door to go business as usual again?
For us, we were lucky. We only had to replace one position. Everybody else stuck around for the furlough and came back when we brought them back. So we were very happy about that. So we had one person to go out and hire for, and they didn't leave because of the furlough. They left because they went back to school full time. So so we were lucky in that regard.
I think we had only one person as well. Did not come back, and actually he's back now, though. He left his job and we were able to get him back. But I think since then we've lost a few folks, and there's been turnover just because the demands in the IT market have been exceptional. So we're seeing, engineers, anything related to security, and even our entry-level jobs, we've had a reduction in just the number of incoming applicants that from a typical year we've seen. So it's definitely been a challenge.
So everyone came back from us too. We actually added positions because it became very clear that IT needed a help desk, because the opportunity cost of having your senior engineers doing help desk, because we didn't have one, right, was finally realized by the enterprise. So that's been a big load off my shoulders, and also my junior. So we're actually, our cyber engineer guy is no longer can't log in questions as well. So that's been beneficial. But I guess I was going to.
I'm sure it didn't help that you won a championship. I'm sure
Yeah. Oh, well, I was going to say, the hard part about recruiting for sports and entertainment is you say it's a network engineer, and I say I'm a network engineer. Yes, I can hold my own with CCIEs. Yes, I can do very well with Windows administration, not as well as I used to because I've been on the Cisco side of the world. But when you hire somebody for network engineering, you got to tell them you're not going to further your career in network engineering in this field. Yes, you can get more experience, but the problem is you're going to be doing everything else. You're going to be doing point of sale troubleshooting. You're going to be working on, I can't get on the cellular node, so work with a third-party operator on the DAS. And it's very difficult to explain to them that we won't logging into the switches very often because we don't, even when we convert for events, it's kind of like, well, we already have these ports set up on the internet for them, so we just keep them there. We're not a larger organization like a SMG or that run 40 events where they actually charge you $3,000 for doing the net port. So it's how do you find somebody who actually wants to work hard? Because again, you're working those difficult hours right now. Like I said, with the last 3 days we've had with 3 consecutive basketball games, people have been there 18 hours because that's the hard part is recruiting that. Once they see the workload, they don't want to do it.
Yeah, the event industry is crazy hours, and we have a pretty lean IT team too. So, I mean, I am not opposed. I'll go out and I'll lay cable and put down gaff tape with the rest of my team if we got a really big convention coming in and moving in. So I'm not just sitting behind a desk all day. And I like it that way, actually. I prefer to get out and help the team when I can. So it definitely is. It's a fun industry, but you definitely are working.
Any other questions? All right. Long term. So think out. I don't know. Go out a few years. Kind of feel like we're. First of all, how do you look at it? Do you still say, "Ooh, there could be another variant," or something might happen, or do you look out and say, "We're going to get back to some sort of normal, right?" And 3 to 5 years, these are the technologies that are something that we have to look at from a strategic perspective. Forget about, everybody always has their fires every day, but strategically, if you look out 3 to 5 years, is it 5G? Is it private LTE? Is it, it sounds like comms is big, but I think one of the real big ones is analytics. I mean, and I can talk to something that I went through talking with the Predators. It was really cool stuff. But what are the things from your purview that are like, if I had to pick 1 or 2 technologies that we need to go to, that's up and coming and we're looking at it, and it's going to make a difference in our venue, for our team, for our concert, for our customer experience. What are those? What are those things?
So I think you hit on the head there with analytics. And the problem with the pandemic is it brought a lot of people out of the woodwork saying, hey, we can tell you your crowd population here. We can tell you how many people are in this location. Well, we've had that forever. It's called Cisco CMX. We've had it, it's also little wait times. We had that in the Pistons, right? Trouble is, it tells you moment in time. It doesn't tell you, okay, here's the customer's journey. How do you help the life cycle of that journey? Someone comes into your venue. Well, it's not just the venue. We have the Deer District now, right? So how do we have that experience? They're probably coming from Green Bay or Appleton or somewhere else. How do we get them to say, okay, we've now got a hotel. How do we make sure we package the deal to make it a situation so they're here longer? They don't just drive in, use our garage, and drive out, right? That's kind of a lot of lost opportunity on both sides of the deal. So how do we then now know which direction the customer came from, as opposed to say, okay, well, yeah, they're congregating at your Mecca. We have, at this time, at 5:30 p.m., you have approximately 800 people here, and at 5:35 p.m., they're at the door here, but it doesn't tell you that who is there. Now, the problem we have with something like Cisco CMX nowadays is you have MAC address randomization. So there are some teams that get past that, but these vendors have not thought across beyond, okay, let's look at that journey. Where can we signal and marketing, where are our bottlenecks? Where can we make sure that we actually can see that 30% of our people are here during the game, therefore we can monetize to this vendor because they have, we have a sign we can put there. How can we make sure we get that eye exposure? And that's what I'm looking for. And the other side of that I want, my pet project is how do we actually now go from actually authorizing the ticket to authorizing the person? There's really cool new security technology coming through where it's no longer going for the TSA. It's really interesting where you go from a model right now in an arena, it's called don't trust. You don't trust an individual, they had to become trusted, therefore they go through security. They're still not trusted, right? They don't have a gun, whatever, but they're not trusted because we haven't validated their ticket. When it'll be a big situation in this industry, and we go to the other, we trust you until we don't. You're walking through our system, and the rate of scanning and now and the accuracy of it is amazing. You can have crowds go through a scanning point at the same time. You can have ushers. You can see who has an issue. They will escort that person to secondary scanning quietly, as opposed to now, okay, it honks, everybody knows you need to go to secondary scanning. Now, ticket, same kind of way. How can we validate the person rather than proving they have a ticket? This person is here to actually see the game. We know that now by, because we obviously know who that ticket holder is. How can we identify that person without having to prove they have a ticket? That's really what I want to see, and that I think would be a really cool point to get to.
What do you think, Derek?
From baseball's perspective, I mean, they're testing out a lot of new technologies. I think last year they started implementing test for facial recognition for tickets, so your face is your ticket. I think that's not just from ease of use, but line reduction and also allowing access into different areas, whether it's media access, player access, whatever it might be. We could use the same technology throughout the stadium. Instead of right now, we have numerous different credentialing systems from fans to Major League Baseball to employees. So with facial rec in the future, it's you could have one system that runs all and also be game sensitive as to where you might be able to go for that particular event. I think it's still premature, but I'd say in a few years from now, it could be something that it's offered to fans in Milwaukee. It's certainly offered to fans in New York and California right now, but I'll see that as a growth opportunity, and certainly plays into the analytics, because if you could track people more, then you know where they're going and be able to, and I think target them more. So targeting an experience, that's where we'd like to see is a targeted experience, not just a broad experience. So knowing your behavior, we can then target, whether it's just marketing, but target seat upgrades, target food, target analytics or videos you might be interested in. So I see a personalized experience coming to the baseball fan.
Yeah, same as these guys said, analytics is a big thing. Knowing that when somebody comes in with a ticket, that what they're spending on for concessions, where they're going. So that's obviously a big thing on the team side. For the convention side, again, more analytics. Like I mentioned, we already can track where they're going, but just to kind of expand on that and say, hey, this booth, he had X number of people spend X number of minutes in front of this booth and that booth, and be able to provide that information to the show when they're in. And then for us too, also security, trying to do, you're used to going through the scanners for coming to games and things, but when you go to a convention, you typically don't do that. And so we're looking at new technologies for the new expanded convention center to allow people to easily pass through the MAG scanners, but without impeding the flow of the traffic too much, and making sure that when you're coming in for a convention, everybody's safe.
Is there any opportunity to, I don't know, if they're in a certain area, they can maybe get a discount on something, or you can get them to, I don't know. Is there any revenue generation more than just that? You know what I mean? Is there a positive marketing thing here?
Done it a lot through BLE beacons over the years for an app. That's where getting the seat upgrades. That's done a lot. So basically, rather than having what they call Santa Clausing to try to get people to move from one to another by gifting, because when you want shows, they don't want to have big blocks of seats that are empty because the artists don't like to look at that. So how do you migrate people? And it's easier than how do we communicate that? Now we can do that because we had the mobile app. We can actually target them when they come in and say, hey, you're in a section, we'd like to upgrade you to this section, do you accept? As immediately. And that's kind of that same situation. Those other beacons, we haven't really used them as much in this arena, but we haven't, you say like a line on Google's ad, say, hey, go 2 sections over, get yourself $1 off a beer, that kind of thing. We did that a lot in the Palace. Oh, that wasn't line of Google, sorry.
Okay, and then from so the thing that I can talk about from analytics standpoint is for the team. Do you see anything that any of the teams are using for analytics for like their players? Do you interact with that? That's probably not MLB. I'm guessing that that's something that you'd see, right, Derek?
Yeah, we're quite involved in the video coaching aspect of not just the major league side, but also our minor league affiliates. So we're implementing Hawkeye, which is the skeletal tracking and video tracking system that tracks the balls and everything you'll see on TV. So we're implementing that now in all of our 4 affiliates, including the one we own in North Carolina, the Mudcats. So we're working with that entity to help put that in. That stadium is far from a modern technology, so we have to, running fiber and locations, and there's no HVAC controlled IDF down there, so we're building infrastructure to put that in. In our spring training facility in Phoenix, which I have folks down there right now, we have seven fields. Each field has 6 4K cameras, and we're even swapping those out after a couple of years to add higher zoom rates. And, well, they're not all 4K. We're moving to 4K and higher zoom rates as well. And for the first year, we're going to start looking at VR for player tracking, so they can look through a Oculus VR lens and pretend like they're seeing a picture. So.
Oh, cool.
So then the NBA has for many years used camera tracking for players and get analytics in. That's actually, it's now done by a team called Second Spectrum. And they get analytics of how long a player has been running, where they've been, where the ball's been, that kind of stuff. And the Hawkeye is now a new system we're using, mainly because what the NBA wants to do is get rid of the human factor as well. I know you've got the balls and strike situation going on in the MLB, but the major problem we have is delay of whistle blow to clock stopping. And the NBA for a long time has used something called precision time, that there is actually a microphone on the lapel of a ref. When they blow it, it sends a signal and stops the clock immediately. And the problem you have now is out of bounds detection. So when a ball or a player steps out of bounds, there's still a delay from the time that the official perceives the fact that it happened to the point that they lift their whistle to the point that they blow it. And so we're still trying to get rid of that, 1.5 to 2 second delay. So that's what this system is doing, and we were actually the first arena to test it. It hasn't gone live yet, but it's more of a system. How can we look at that? The other thing is using Hawkeye to try to look at goaltending adjudication, right? Was their hand in the cylinder or not? Because that's, frankly, you're not going to get a view of that as a referee. So how do we make sure that it actually was goaltending or not? So.
Anything from you, Eric?
No, you would know more about the Admiral's training than I would. It's your system.
Well, so one of the guys that I work with in our analytics area, he's a data scientist, but he's a hockey nut. And in his free time, because often engineers do this stuff in their free time, he did this entire model on assisting coaches with player movement, shots, percentages. You know how that is we have, we have that whole area where the media is, but we have one person that keeps an eye on shots on goal and who the players are and assist and all those different things that are all manual yet today. and then they get input at some point into a computer, and they take that data and they, do whatever they do with it. Well, he gets his hands on some raw data, right? And he imports it. And imagine, and I can show anybody these graphics at any time, but imagine being the coach, right? And you're out on the ice with your iPad, and you go over to Joe hockey player and go, listen, Joe, you're shooting 73% from the right side of the net. You're shooting 33%, from the left side, and you're scoring X amount. You need to work on this. But those are, to me, is just, that's crazy. But there's still so much manual input yet. But I had the opportunity to sit through that conversation, not just with the Admirals, but with the people that do that for the Nashville Predators. And it was really, really pretty cool to see what it is that they look for. But the amount of data is just incredible. So it's to me, I think you said something, you laughed about the 300 megs that you put together, and you said you have to plan on 2 or 3 times your bandwidth or whatever. You got to think about that, because how long ago was a T1 a lot to go through, right? We have a long ways to go. Are there any other texts that jump into mind, or you have anything you wish for?
Well,
how about more human error? Yeah. Instead of, oh my God, was he out of bounds?
Well, I missed your question. Yes, the team does have a whole separate analytics team based separately from the actual business side, right? So, and that's where the nice Azure machine learning expenses have gone through the roof now. And that's the secret sauce of any team. So you have those data analytics, people moving around. I remember back in the Pistons when it was just on a virtual machine and they were plowing through my host's processing power, and now I do it in Azure. But it's, like you said, that's what Second Spectrum provides, is exactly the player shot from here most of the times, made it here. So there's no, yes, there's right now a stat system where you put a little stylus on a screen that says this is where the shot, but Second Spectrum can tell them exactly where that was done. And that's so we know that, hey, you have this percentage over here, maybe you should try shooting over here, or their guard, you tend to know certain teams guard in this manner, therefore play this way. I mean, that's what MLB does with the shift. I'm sure you got the same kind of stuff, but yes, that's the big thing where it's going. I can see that machine learning, and I'm just looking what Giannis did with his free throws. I mean, he learned that's not necessarily machine learning him, but that's where you go as an industry nowadays. You look to actually perfect your play, and that's where something can tell you, maybe a coach can't tell as easily, but it can say, this is where you're not doing well. Maybe you're too heavy on your left foot when you're trying to do a jump shot or something. I mean, all these things are coming soon for players.
A lot of tech.
For us, it's storage, video storage. I mean, we're with not only the 4K cameras, but we're also implementing high frame rate cameras, and those consume just an amazing amount of storage. So we have a 2-year-old system that we're at 95% capacity on, and we over provisioned at the time. So we're chewing through it much faster than we had predicted. So we're now scaling that to the cloud and trying to figure out if we're going to continue to do that or increase our on-premises. And the answer is probably both, just so we can be somewhat more reactive and scalable at the same time. But that's where we see a huge growth in what we need.
Yeah, that's a lot of data that we're talking about, not just from gathering data from customers for the experience, but also from internally and with the sports venues and that. Where do you store it? I think there's a lot of questions about, okay, I went to the cloud, but that's really expensive, and how should we build? Yeah, there's a lot of questions about what the future is, whether you come back on-prem or depending on the business, right? So I don't know, yes?
I have a question about the ticket using facial recognition. What have you found as far as privacy is concerned for the consumer from the coast, from New York and California? And how can you learn from that before you bring it to Milwaukee?
So some of the final studies are still coming out as far as those tests. So of course there was an opt-in, and I'm sure a lot of paperwork that each of the fans that were in those trials had to sign. So I think that's definitely a concern, which would be for me as well, is what happens to my facial data? Is it stored in something like a Clear? If anyone's, people are familiar with Clear at the airports, they have their own way to store, so they'll scan your face and then store a token of what that would look like. They don't, as they say, they don't actually store the unique points of it. So I think there's a lot of learning that needs to happen to make the benefit outweigh the potential privacy concerns. But without a doubt, that is something that they're going to have to address and overcome to get it to go full scale. We see it as kind of a fast pass initially. So if you want to opt in, so a limited amount of fans could use it, and because they're okay with that because they see the benefit. But to get it to go full scale, I think is going to be very hard. And then, of course, on the children's side, under 18, I don't think we can do it or anyone can do it. So that's would be not something we do at all.
Anybody else have any input on that? I don't know.
Same concerns on data anonymization, like same thing, because we can at least tokenize the ticket side, right? You have an ID that is anonymized, and then you can have an intermediary connect between the two. But should those two ever join, bad things could happen. So that's where you got to protect from. I agree in your concern. That's one reason I've been looking at those things in a certain way. How do we make sure we protect the privacy, but still make it easier for somebody to get in? That's been the challenge.
Good. And I think that it goes just beyond facial recognition too. I think people want to know what you're doing with their data. If they put the MLB app on, or NBA app, or whatever app it is that you use, and you're grabbing that data, what are you doing with it? Who has access to it? Does anybody else have that concern?
Well, the concern is being tracked while you're inside the venue.
Well, you know what, and I agree with you. We were talking about that last week, that it's not just facial recognition, but actually triangulation using the app on your phone, where if you're on the network, they're following you, right? And Eric bought this shirt and he was here at this time and whatever. It's a little creepy to me, but some people actually like the fact that when they go on, Facebook or Meta or whatever they call it today, they go on there and it just shows them stuff that they look at. Me personally, I just want to buy what I need when I go in the store. I don't want somebody.
So your concern is actually shared. So what I'm trying to do is make it so it doesn't say Eric did this. A person who did this also did this is what I'm looking at, right? As opposed to Eric did this, then Eric did this, then Eric did this. Oh, and by the way, he went to this bathroom. I don't want to know that. I want to know that a user a customer who did this also did this, but did this, as opposed to knowing that it's you.
Yep.
That's because that's where bad things happen.
Yep. All right, what are we doing here? Doing pretty good. How you guys doing? How you feeling? How about some closing comments? Let's do that. Does anybody have any questions? Matt?
How about cryptocurrency? Is that a disruption or is that an opportunity in your area?
We looked at it for additional revenue when we had to shut down the arena because we have really cheap electricity and idle servers. But other than that, I don't know yet as far as accepting it for payment. That definitely could be an option in our app. Who knows?
But some of the players are accepting that as...
With the especially NFTs and all that fun stuff, they are. It'll be interesting to see where that kind of goes.
Yeah, especially with like the virtual reality, right? So now the ability to make some more exchanges through that virtual app or whatever we decide to do. So.
Fun stuff.
I'm in favor of Bernie Coin, so if we can get that started, that'd be great. I think I could see tickets going to an NFT. I think that's a possibility where ticketing is a more secure platform being stored on the blockchain. Definite possibility and use case there. But somewhat not joking on the Bernie Coin, I think so points and gift card and all that kind of digital currency that can use within the stadium. I think that's a legitimate way to track it and secure it, is using the blockchain. So there's no plans to take Bitcoin yet or any other coin in the stadium yet. So
for us, I mean, we're keeping an eye on it, but it's really not anything we have any plans to do with at this point. But like I said, we're always keeping an eye on things.
Anybody else? Dave?
Are any of your advertisers or sponsors asking you to have like local content for rich media for people to access for like games while the games are going on, watching videos, etc.? I'm just curious if that's something that's happening.
Local content like in other teams or?
Like, just to play a game, while they're watching the game. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud here.
Our sponsors want to have the Milwaukee feel. And that's why if you look around the arena, you've got everything that's, Solomon's or things of that nature. But as far as local content to, yeah, so like two screening and gamification kind of stuff. Haven't really, the league has tried that, but it hasn't really taken on much for us. Has it done that much for MLB?
They've talked about it, and we were hoping during the pandemic we could have accelerated the second screen idea, and it's kind of starting to come about a little bit. But in stadium local content is with broadcasting rights, and I guess it does get into a streaming issue as well, trying to stream live video or any video through Wi-Fi is difficult, but I see that as a 5G use case as well. So
I'm trying to understand playing a game while you're at a game. Are you talking about some sort like an interactive thing that? So, like for example, something that we do is we'll prepare the fans by doing a read on, hey, download this app. We're going to play this game, and maybe we'll have a question. We'll have one of our entertainers with a fan, and they'll say, all right, look up at the video board, and the fans are going to help you out. And they ask them 3 questions, and the fans, because they're on the app, they can actually interact. And what happens is it says, all right, is it A, B, or C? And the fans pick one, and the fan says A, and it comes up and it says this is what they picked, and you know what I mean. So it's and there's a couple of different varieties of that, and we certainly do something like that.
I mean, I would like to see the sausage race, of course, is famous. So I'd like to see that be digitized to some, so you could live vote and see the results on screen right before they run. That might be fun.
We'll make that a reality. I got a guy. All right.
So talking in like hypotheticals of what could be happening, the Brewers are in an upcoming season and Bucks are heading into playoffs. Are there anything like in the works for this year that fans can might be able to experience that's already might be a reality?
Well, when we make it to the finals, we're going to have a lot more stuff outside that's actually going to be organized this time. So that's actually in the works, and we will be there.
If season starts on time, we'll have so new DAS in the stadium, so connections, our signaling will be great, which allows us to do new things. So once that gets in, and then it kind of hope it spurs other initiatives and innovations. Besides some new spaces, we have exciting some upcoming announcements for our JCI club. So there'll be a new use of that space soon, which will be really neat. Hope to see that announcement soon. Otherwise, I think they're being pretty, unfortunately, they have to be kind of cautious right now with the unknown nature of the season. So they're hoping, I think, when maybe mid-season hits, we can do a few new things.
And the Arrows are playing. You didn't ask about them. What's that all about? Okay, well, next Saturday, we're going to have Night Ranger after the game. Yeah, right. And then we got Jimmy Allen, and we got Skillet. We got all sorts of stuff going on. It's more than just a game. All right.
When are the Admirals and the NHL going to bring back the flaming puck for the TVs?
Never. Ever. That was the worst. Come on. Are you kidding me? That was terrible. It was a cool, you know what, it was a gimmick to get people to watch. Personally, I think I got vertigo from that. It was terrible. What? Where'd it go? Anyhow.
4K, but yeah.
4K? All right. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Through the pandemic with work from home, have you found like the business more, like they support technology more, the IT space more? Is it less? Is it more? That's one thing because we had to do all this work from home so quickly, right? So I'm interested to see what you guys' thoughts of like what it went through during the pandemic and where you think it's going as well.
I think for us, it's definitely at least our CEO and other leaders above my level definitely got a better appreciation for IT, for sure, with all the stuff that we had to make happen in such a short amount of time. So and that's always great. But ultimately, we're IT, so we're used to not being recognized for anything, right? So.
Yeah, I second that, and the reliance on it, especially with the mobility, so we can continue to, support it and know that's not going away, and they just, want to have it at their fingertips. All the while, we're trying to keep pursuing a better security program, so they can be at home, they could be in a hotel, wherever, and we're providing the same level of security as if they're sitting in the stadium. So that's a continued challenge, but I think as was said, the zero trust philosophy, which we're moving to, we're not all the way there yet, is something that I think it's not only good from a security practice, but it also gets people used to doing the same thing. And versus the practice, if you're at home, you do something as different from within the stadium. But zero trust, you're always doing it the same way.
And we got our help desk through the pandemic, so that was nice. That's really helped a lot. So now our security guy can actually focus on that, and the C-suite definitely recognizes more that, especially since we have attention, that we're under attack a lot more. So security training, acknowledgement with our team is is more important. It's actually part of onboarding now by HR, which it wasn't before. So that's another improvement, and just getting more awareness of what IT is. We're there to help you. We're not there to be a hindrance, although security sometimes we are a hindrance. But the whole idea is just trying to introduce us to the ecosystem of the employee, being the employee's mind is what's really helped out. Hoping to move forward with that more.
Not necessarily, I think, because of the pandemic, but we, through our cybersecurity insurance, they're requiring a lot more of us now to get that insurance. And we're doing a cybersecurity tabletop just in a few weeks with just internally, and we have a lot of C-levels wanted to be involved in that. So I think that's great to see. I think it'll be a good eye-opening experience for them to realize what can go wrong as we work through the tabletop exercise, and it's all being driven by our cybersecurity insurance, which I'm happy about, because for IT, we always want security, but sometimes they don't necessarily listen to us. But when the insurance company is saying, hey, your coverage is going to be this if you only do this, but we'll raise it up to this if you do all these things. So it's a good movement, I think.
Yeah, I agree. We good? What do you say? Want to button this up? Matt, why don't you start? You got any last words of wisdom? How about something like, go Bucks? It doesn't have to be anything lengthy. I'm not looking for a novel.
Well, as we trade away one of our players we need now. So no, it's a fun industry to work in, always changing. You go from reason the CTO isn't here today is because of the RNC coming in, right? I mean, we're always doing things, always looking for events, and that's why it's always different. And the big thing about the Pistons was their Palace Sports Entertainment is their motto was very simple. The corporate motto was just thrill. And that's why I actually like working in this environment, because it is what I like to see. I miss the fans. It's good to be back, and it's good to see everyone, especially in concerts when you get to watch the fans have fun.
Yeah, it's great to have events back in the building. I was looking at our event calendar just today, and 22. I mean, we're back to pre-pandemic levels of events on our event calendar. Not only with the sports teams, but with meetings and conventions coming in. It's great to have all the activity back in the building. The auto show is coming back, moving in next week. So they weren't in our building last year, so it's good to have the Cars back in the building. And of course, go Admirals, go Wave, go Panthers. And I haven't seen any schedule from Brew City Brewers yet, but if you've never been to a roller derby,
never been.
They are a blast. So,
you know what? Who do I need to talk to? We're going to do a
we haven't seen a
we're gonna do
schedule from
WTA
them, so.
event. That's what we're going to do.
And
And we're going to
do
put
a roller
Troy
derby.
on roller skates. Now that'd be a riot.
From the Brewers side, let's just pretend the owners and players make up their mind. We're excited because we do see really good ticket sales, so I think fans are going to be coming back in good numbers this year. We have a lot of events. Eric Church was just announced, which is in the spring, so we'll see a lot of events and non-concert, non-baseball events. We see just a lot of activity, so we'll keep the stadium full, and a lot of new things coming up. Should be announced soon that are going to be really exciting, so should be a good year.
Awesome. Yeah, go Admirals. I did that, the show with the Badger Band. I do that every year. It's my favorite game because I get to sit with them and they do jump around and everything, and I bring them on the ice and they do a fourth period and stuff. But we get to go through the theater, and I've never been to an actual show at the theater. But that theater is beautiful inside. It really is.
It's a beautiful theater, a lot of history. I don't even know Bob Seefeld. He's been our VP of facilities for, I don't know. I think he's been there since the building's open. And he has walked through. You should walk through with him sometime. He's got so many stories of that building, and built in 1909. And Theodore Roosevelt was actually assassination attempt on Theodore Roosevelt happened across the street from there. He walked into the auditorium, it was the Milwaukee Auditorium at the time, and still continued to give his speech with a bullet lodged in his chest. And he didn't go to the hospital till after his speech.
Do you know that I have the bobblehead, the Admiral's bobblehead that they did of Roosevelt, with him in with a bullet shot in him? They did a bobblehead. Like, you guys are sick.
And they say it's haunted too. And I've been through that theater. I've never seen some of the stuff that people claim they've seen, but it's a little creepy when you're walking through there and all the lights are out and it's real quiet. And
I was talking with somebody when we were walking through there, and it was just two of us, and she said, it's haunted. I'm like, okay. Well, it'll be another discussion. Well, listen, does anybody have anything else? Because we're right at 3:56. So I would just like to say thank you, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. Was this okay? Yeah, a little. Troy, do you have anything?
Sure. Thanks everybody for coming again. Really appreciate it. If you're new here, your first time, please go check out memberships to Katie.
Hello.
Go talk to her about memberships coming, getting to experience this more. We welcome you all outside for happy hour, some networking. Chef puts out some great food, some drinks, so feel free to stick around and enjoy the company around you.
Also, stay tuned for some great programming coming next month. We're going to have our cybersecurity panel, so we've already locked in some great speakers to talk about the ever-increasing attack surface and how companies in Wisconsin are mitigating against that.
And that event is open for registration already. There'll be an email that goes out tomorrow about, thanking you for today's event, as well as the link for that. But it'll be a really good panel, so. March 17th, that same.
Are we going to have green beer? Does everybody need a green beer?
We'll have to figure that out. I thought you were making corned beef.
Okay.
It doesn't sound too bad.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.
All right,